In visiting the Korean Peninsula and here in China, President Trump is getting a close-up look at the region where the much discredited ideology of communism still maintains a strong presence. His visit occurs exactly 100 years after the communists seized power for the first time anywhere. Our resident historian, Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen, looks back on the Russian Revolution and its meaning today.
Workers in St. Petersburg scrubbed the statue of Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, better known as Lenin.
Red Birthday.
But a century after the Russian Revolution he led, the stain of communism on the modern world remains indelible. Far from creating a workers' paradise, the philosophy of Karl Marx, virtually everywhere it's been tried.
In Havana, dictator Fidel Castro leads the Cuban May Day celebration.
Has instead brought only totalitarianism and an estimated 100 million deaths.
Lenin was the template not just for Stalin, but for Mao and for Pol Pot.
Michael Oslin is the author of The End of the Asian Century.
It is the godlessness, it's the lack of faith in anything superior to the state, anything otherworldly, and also the fact that there is no room for individual private property or markets.
After they seized Petrograd in November 1917, Lenin's Bolsheviks executed Tsar Nicholas II and his family. An emigre from Moscow, Dmitry Simes, is president of the Center for the National Interest.
Because when the Bolsheviks took over, almost everybody assumed, except the Bolsheviks themselves, that people so cruel, people so inexperienced, people so fanatical, they cannot stay in power for a long time. Well, they stayed in power from 1917 till the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991.
A non-aggression pact between Stalin's Russia and Hitler's Germany lasted 3 years. By 1942, Russia, the United States, Britain, and France joined forces to defeat the Axis powers in World War II.
In Moscow, the 44th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution gets underway.
In the Cold War, the Soviet Union exported revolution. The rise of Mao Zedong in China gave the USSR its most important ally.
Mao treats his visitor to a glimpse of Red China's military might. A parade of Soviet-supplied T-34 tanks.
The decline, in retrospect, was slow but steady. President Nixon's visit to China exploited Sino-Soviet tensions and helped bring China into the modern world. 2 books by Soviet dissident Alexander Solzhenitsyn, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich and the Gulag Archipelago, laid bare the brutality of the Soviet state. And at the Berlin Wall, President Reagan summoned the spirit of human freedom.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Communism persists today chiefly in China, which embraced some forms of private enterprise starting in the late 1970s, and in North Korea, which is speeding towards a nuclear weapons capability, even as some 2 million people there have starved, and the economy depends almost entirely on assistance from China. Brett?
James Rosen in D.C. James, thanks.